Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending my presentation. The title is Epistemic Reflection as an Emerging Teaching Practice in Culturally Diverse Classrooms. I start saying that the epistemic reflection emerges as a teaching practice for enacting an inclusive relationship between epistemologies that belong to different cultures. And these emerge in classrooms that are culturally diverse because of the plural population composition and or the immigration processes. In those classrooms coexist the epistemology of the subject matters, in this case science, and the epistemologies of the students, teachers, cultures. In this coexistence, teachers might enact an exclusionary or inclusive relationship between epistemologies. That's why this study aims to define emerging practices when science teachers use the epistemological bridge approach in their lessons. The epistemological bridge is an approach to support teachers to design inclusive practices. Teachers engage students in producing explanations of phenomenon from different epistemologies. Students use the epistemology of science and the epistemology of their communities to explain the same phenomenon from different perspectives. Now I want to present the epistemological bridge metaphor and then two practical principles that science teachers can use to design inclusive practices. Here you can see two endpoints of the bridge. They represent two different cultures with two different epistemologies. Those epistemologies consist of ideas, practices, norms, and values. And they are different domains between them. With this, we can say that the cultures and epistemologies are independent between them. With this part of the bridge, teachers recognize the epistemological domains and use them as content to teach, respecting their independence. It means not mixing them, not explaining, validating, invalidating, or justifying an epistemology from the other, and not giving more importance to an epistemology over the other. And here we have the walkway which communicates or links the two different cultures and epistemologies. It consists of ideas, practices, values, norms, purposes, artifacts, and more elements that are in common between the cultures and the epistemologies. With these common elements, communities can start communication or interchange. As an example of a common purpose could be the need to explain something from the different epistemologies. With this, we can say that the epistemologies have similar things between them. With this part of the bridge, teachers engage students in crossing the cultural and epistemological borders to transiting between the common or through the common walkway to enter new context from the originals. This transiting, this crossing could be in any direction and in any moment. And to the end, individuals make the decision if they want to remain in their original epistemological context or here in the common place or in the new contexts. The whole epistemological bridge is a process in which students learn and use the different epistemological domains while transiting between cultures and epistemologies. Now, the two practical principles. First, the epistemological independence, which states that every epistemology has a domain and inherent value. With these, teachers engage students in learning and using each domain to propose explanations. It means that teachers before have identified the different epistemological domains as content to teach. And the second principle is the epistemological similarity. It states that epistemologies have common elements between them. With these, teachers engage students in crossing cultural borders to transit between domains. It means that previously the teachers have identified the common elements between the epistemologies. The methodology. The researchers supported teachers in planning and enacting the epistemological bridge. Teachers engaged students in proposing explanations on a situation from chemistry and traditional epistemologies. 3 different teachers from 3 different schools in Colombia have used the epistemology of chemistry and epistemologies belonging to different Colombian communities to guide students in proposing explanations on different phenomena. The data sources were the teacher's lessons planning, lesson recordings, audio or video, field notes done by the researcher or teachers, pictures of the blackboard, and the reflections and feedback provided by the teachers. And the analysis consisted of grouping data to identify emerging categories. Results. The 3 teachers enacted an epistemic reflection because they addressed with students the nature, structure, and use of the ideas, practices, and explanations of each epistemology. As an example, I want to tell you a case in which students carry out a traditional production practice, which consisted of salting meat for preservation, after the scientific production practice, which consisted of measuring the humidity of kitchen salt. After finishing the scientific practice, the students used the same material and staff to develop the traditional practice. The teacher identified that the students mixed the epistemic domains, and during the next lesson, she did an explicit reflection on this. Here, I want to show you a part of the conversation between the teacher and the students. Teacher, now what is the mistake here? A student, Petri dish. Another student, it is because we put the meat in this box. Teacher, and why putting it in this box is a mistake? Students, because that is a scientific and not a traditional. It must have been on a platter. Teacher, yes, because that is not traditional and we had to put it on a platter or on a table for salting. For the traditional practice, the farmers, the natives, the grandparents, did they use lab coat? What did they use? Student, nothing. Teacher, they use nothing or an apron. We mixed the elements of the traditional domain with the scientific domain. In this way, the teacher guided students to reflect on the epistemology's independence and the use of the elements according to the cultural and epistemic contexts. The epistemic reflection as an emerging practice might be framed into a theoretical approach and into empirical evidence. The epistemic reflection framed into the nature of science. Different authors argue the positive effect of teaching the nature of science on science learning. Some authors reported on the integration of the nature of science in the curriculum, evidencing the importance of this approach for teaching and learning science. And other researchers argue the contribution of the nature of science to culturally diverse contexts. Because with this approach, students are able to distinguish between science and other epistemological domains, because it is an opportunity to transit between cultures and because students are able to understand science as a way of knowing. In my study, the teachers with students addressed explicitly the domain of every epistemology, identifying different and common elements between them, and about when to use each element according to every context. And the epistemic reflection is supported by studies about the effect of instruction on students' explanations. McNeil and collaborators have demonstrated a positive effect of the practice making the rationale of scientific explanations explicit on the student's product. During my study, the teachers made explicit the structure of the scientific and traditional explanations and how to develop every part of them. In other reports, McNeil and collaborators demonstrated a positive effect of the practice modeling scientific explanations on the students' learning product. During my study, the teachers modeled a variety of explanations examples before encouraging students to do it by themselves. Thank you so much.